I played basketball for my high school team. I was actually pretty decent and really enjoyed the sport even to this day. This was about 5 years ago. It was the dead of winter, January, and it was freezing out. We were playing a game at home against a team we played against every year. It was a close game throughout, and the teams were super evenly matched up. I'm sure it was a fun game to watch. Anyways, in the last 2 minutes of the game, I missed a crucial free throw that in my opinion cost our team the game. My coach denied that was the single cause of us losing, but I'm competitive and pretty self-critical. I was beating myself up over missing an important free throw that should have been automatic. I asked my coach if I could stay behind and practice a bit by myself. He said sure, as long as I made sure to turn off the lights and lock the door to the locker room when I left. I had a good relationship with my coach, and he trusted me on my own. I just wanted to practice free throws after missing that one. I was in there for about 45 minutes. There was no one in the entire school besides me and a few night shift janitors the school has. I had been there late a few times, but never by myself. I got to a point where I was satisfied with myself for putting in the extra time, considering I felt as if I had cost the team the game earlier. I had to go back to the locker room and grab my bag, and also lock the door and turn off the lights as my coach had asked of me. I walked into the locker room, and was immediately hit with a blast of cold air. It was literally freezing in there. It was the same temperature as outside. I remember just thinking, what the hell? But I walked over to my locker to grab my bag. The back door in there was wide open. It now made sense why it was so cold. But what didn't make sense was why the door was opened. There's no way anyone would have opened it on their way out. I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. I took out my phone and called my coach. I had to ask if he by chance opened the door and forgot to close it. He picked up and said he did not and that it should be closed. I grabbed my bag and walked out and back into the gym. One of the janitors was in there cleaning up after the game. I asked him if he'd come lock the outside door for me real quick before I left. He agreed and walked back with me to the locker room. It was still freezing in there, but now the lights were off. I did not turn them off before I had left. I flicked the switch, and there was an eerie silence. The only thing you could hear was the wind from outside. I didn't really know what I was expecting. Obviously now, I knew someone had to be in there. The janitor was behind me trying to talk to me. I whispered back to him, I think there's someone in here. I walked slightly further in, and turned to the right toward the door where my locker was. At the end of the room, I saw someone's head behind the furthest locker down. I could only see an eye and part of their hair. I froze in shock. The person noticed that I saw them. They bolted from out behind the locker and out the back door. The janitor saw everything. He quickly went to the door, shut it, and locked it. I didn't get a great look at the person. It looked like a man for sure, though. They were wearing a black long-sleeved shirt and jeans. I have no idea who that guy was to this day. Someone must have went out the back door at some point and just didn't lock it. I don't think anything was stolen. But even though, with the lights being off and the door being wide open, I was expecting to see someone. Still, when I actually did see someone, that's when it really gets real. When I was younger, the kids on my street and I would go over to a small park that was located in our neighborhood. There was a small playground, as well as a big field behind it with soccer goals. The field was big enough that we could do basically whatever we wanted. We played soccer, football, baseball. I even remember hitting golf balls over there a couple times. Even better was the fact that there was rarely anyone ever over there, so we basically had the place to ourselves. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time of this story. Our parents didn't mind that we went out there, considering we were in a group, and it wasn't too far from any of our houses anyways. There was about 6 or 7 of us from the street, including me, who would go play on the field. I remember this particular day, we were at the field playing soccer. It was a super nice summer day, not too hot, and not a cloud in the sky. It was pretty much perfect weather. We were the only ones at the field today, so we literally had the whole place to ourselves. We were down at the end of the field, furthest away from the parking lot, when I noticed out of the corner of my eye a car pulled into the parking lot. It was no big deal. It was public after all. A lot of times, we would see families with young kids hang out at the playground area. No one got out of the car for about 10 minutes or so. I wasn't paying that much attention, but I did notice no one was outside at the playground. Eventually, some older man got out of the car and started walking over toward us. We were on the side of the field closest to the parking lot now, so he wasn't very far away. He called over to us while walking over. We all stopped playing, and the man asked us if he could join in on our game. None of us had ever seen this guy before or even knew who he was. It would have been one thing if he was closer to our age, but he was at least 40. We all kinda looked at each other and hesitantly said that he could. We didn't want to be rude and say no, but none of us really wanted him to play. We just picked up where we left off and started playing again. There was a turnover, and the ball was being pushed down to the other side of the field now. The guy who was supposedly playing with us now didn't even move. He was just kinda watching. It didn't seem like he was actually engaged in the game. It was kinda creepy, and now he was starting to make us a little uncomfortable. We all came together real quick and decided that we were done playing for the day, and that we all would just head back home and play Xbox together for a while. That sounded good to everyone, so we picked up the soccer ball and started walking back toward the parking lot. The guy was still down at the other end of the field, and we'd have to pass him to get onto the road that leads back to our street. We were approaching him, trying to avoid any eye contact, and he asked where we were going. Someone spoke up and said that we were done playing and we were going back home. He just said "oh," but he stayed in the same spot watching us. We walked past him and got back onto the main street. We all talked about how that guy was weird, and that we hoped we wouldn't see him again when we went back to play on the field. About 5 minutes later, we turned down our street. The plan was for everyone to come over to my house and play Xbox for a little bit. We got back to my house and started getting everything all set up. The blinds in the living room were open, and we always liked playing video games with the lights off and the blinds shut. I went to the window to lower the blinds. I looked out, and the same car from the park was sitting at the end of our street. I called my friends over, and they came to look out the window with me. We all stood there watching for a couple minutes, and then the car drove off. I shut the blinds, and we just started up with the game. I'm pretty sure the guy couldn't see us in the window, but it was still super creepy. He must have followed us to an extent after we left the field. I never saw that guy again after this day. I don't know what he really wanted, but our whole interaction with him was definitely creepy. When my son was younger, he used to play travel baseball for a local team in our area. The team would play tournaments on the weekends at various locations in the state, and sometimes even surrounding states. It was pretty much the only thing we did on the weekends during summer, because it was super time consuming. I enjoyed it for the most part though. It was the beginning of August, and the final tournament scheduled for the year. Being the last tournament, that also meant it was an out-of-state tournament. Every year, the team did at least a couple tournaments where we would have to stay in hotels for the weekend. This was one of those weekends. It was a 4-hour drive from our house to the location. We showed up at the hotel and met up with the other families. The next day was Saturday. Our team was scheduled to play 2 games that day. One of them was a late game, and it was actually the last game of the day. The game started around 8 p.m. It had already been a super long day, and I knew everyone was already tired. About midway through the game, our team was in the field. Our pitcher hit the opposing hitter with a pitch. It was a pretty standard hit by pitch. He just got hit square in the back. One of the parents from the other team started yelling loud, basically claiming that it was intentional, and that the pitcher should be thrown out of the game. It was pretty obnoxious, to say the least. He was causing a scene, and the umpire had to stop the game and tell him to calm down. I'm assuming it had to have been his kid who was hit. I kinda thought it was pretty funny that he was mad about it. Hit by pitches are part of baseball. It's not super uncommon to happen. I'll leave out most of what was said, but this guy was yelling obscenities and things of that nature. He eventually seemed to calm down, and the game resumed. Fast forward to the end of the game, and at this point it was close to 10 p.m. The team had their little post-game huddle, and eventually everyone started making their way to the parking lot to head back to the hotel. It was going to be another long day tomorrow. Everyone on the team was basically walking together out of the park. Someone came up behind our group and started trying to get the attention of the team's coach. It was that parent from before who went crazy when his son got hit. He was accusing the coach of telling the pitcher to hit his kid and a bunch of other nonsense. The coach defended himself and the pitcher, and eventually parents who were standing by chimed into the conversation. The guy ended up shoving the coach in the middle of all this, and it looked like things were going to get bad. The tournament directors had to run over to the parking lot and settle things down before they got completely out of hand. Things calmed down, and eventually everyone split off and went to their cars. In all the years I'd been to baseball games for my son, nothing to this level had ever happened. That guy clearly was overreacting, and honestly everyone involved was lucky that this didn't turn out to be a full-on street fight.